A lot of reasons that we don't do what we want and the regrets that she had learned through her time was due to a little lack of courage. This new phase, this is what I have to try to redefine.
The lessons you're going to learn firsthand will apply to anybody in different areas of their own pursuits. Welcome to another episode of The Next Episode. Forget number we're on now, but Dad's got his notes, got his readers. Make sure you guys see all of that. And let's just get right to it. You've got your thoughts planned out. You gave me a little bit of insight on what you might be wanting to talk about, and I'll fill in where I can.
All right. Thanks, Jay. Good to be here again on this Tuesday already, end of last week of March. Man, hard to believe, just as we've been talking about this time of life. Time moves along maybe a little faster than previously of when I was working. And we had talked about that a little bit in a previous discussion of how in the world we got things done in our working life. And now it seems to be the same in this phase of life. But it's a much better phase. First, want to say, thank you and appreciation to those of you out there that have taken some time to review our podcast here. It's great to see that there's been some interest and responses back. So thank you for taking that. We know you get a lot of material and a lot of podcasts these days. So Jay and I just thank you for that work that you're doing for us of reading and listening in. So that's always appreciated. Jay, before we jump right in, just maybe a little point of order here. You still alive in any brackets? You play any brackets this year?
We did a family one. I hate brackets, so I can't not pick the higher seed. I have Duke winning it all as much as a Tar Heel fan as that was. And I did not have the Tar Heels going to the Final Four. So I'm excited to see the third take at Duke, Carolina coming up this weekend. But as much as I don't want to like Duke, I think it would be pretty cool for Coach K to win on his way out. I just hope that if that's what happens, there's no controversy about fouls and timeouts and all the BS that people are going to say, that I've already heard it. The NCAA wants Coach K to win on the way out. Yeah, it's a great story, but they're not. You can't fix a game like the games have been up till now to have it be they're letting it be easy for Duke to win. They've won. There hasn't been any close calls or anything like that. Like, they've earned there to be there. They're not going to rig things to be in Coach K's favor. I think people who make those conspiracy theories, they're just sore losers. I don't want to call them losers themselves, but I hate those storylines. So anyways, yes, I don't know who's going to win our family one, but we just did it for fun.
Okay. Well, knowing that you've been a Carolina fan since you were young and all, just was just interested to see how you all. I know. I didn't play any brackets. Didn't pay much attention to NCAA this year. It was replaced by fifth and third grade basketball for the most part this season, which was much better. But anyhow, thanks for allowing that little diversion, since it is Final Four bracket weekend coming up, and a little bit of a story to be told about what you just mentioned. I think it's probably going to be Coach K's win and his way out, just the way it's going to fall. Cards are set that way. Like you said, you put it out there, the universe kind of delivers, and I think for Coach K, he didn't win his ACC tournament, lost to Carolina. This is a bigger win and a way out. It just seems to be set that way, unless something really happens.
Clark Kellogg highlighted something after the Duke won to go to the Final Four, and just said that before it could have been pressure of don't let Coach K down, and now that the team's kind of they're relaxed, and it's just going to happen. So I do think universal pull, or the universe working its magic, is going to help that happen as well. I just think it's meant to be.
Yep. And I think it's just, bring that up just because it is, Final Four weekend coming up. Both of us obviously being basketball fans, and others.
Who do you think's going to
win? I want it to be North Carolina, just because I want to see the spoiler, if you would. But, as we know, any given day, I think the Final Four that are in there, you're right. I think the edge goes to Duke. I'd like for it to be North Carolina just because I'd like it to be that way. But I wouldn't rule Kansas out. Again, we'll see, as always, right? Who would ever thought St. Peter's would have advanced to the Big Eight, or Elite Eight, and beat Kentucky first. So, as we always know, right? Any given day, the ball's falling, it's falling. If it's not, We'll see.
I like St. Peter's coach. He
Yeah.
won't be there next year.
No. They already have him going to maybe
Back
his
to
alma
see-
mater.
yeah,
I think
see
his
how-
alma mater is
yeah.
what they were talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a great story there, which kind of segues back into our day to day about my continued effort with this podcast is to take us along my writing of the book of the encore phase of life and trying to stay true to that. Writing a new chapter today. Kind of wanted to continue where we left off with last episode. We talked about time management, how the days fall out, don't become victim to falling to traps, which is my Achilles heel. I talked a little bit about that, and I'm still finding myself falling victim to that a little bit. So what I wanted to talk about in today's discussion is the idea of, beginning each day with a heightened sense of not, security, not a heightened sense of purpose, although those are very important. But I wanted us to believe that this phase of our life, we get up each day with a heightened sense of enjoyment. We've been talking about that a little bit kind of behind the scene in our discussions, all leading up to this phase. Not that it should be this phase, but we should start each of our days, no matter where we're at in life, with a heightened sense of enjoyment of getting our days. But I think as we've discussed, when you're working, you don't necessarily wake up every day with a heightened sense of excitement because just maybe it's going to be a bad day at work for nothing but a bunch of meetings or whatever, or things aren't going as well as you'd like them to be. But since we're talking about this phase of our life, our encore, where we get to write a little bit more of our script, I think it's very critical for us, those of us that are just beginning, to do that and not necessarily make this discussion so academic and not saying what I'm talking about is a very rigid plan, because I think that's also critical for us, not to necessarily make it so rigid that, you're writing down, and I think we all make our own notes, our own lists. We always have the honey-do list that, now is going to grow. Obviously, as if you're not working, that honey-do list for us kind of has an opportunity to grow a little bit, which is exciting as well, to keep us busy and having our purpose to do what we need to. But I also think this is the first time in our life where we've not had a lot of people telling us what to do. Right? We stop and think about that. Those of you that have been in this phase for a period of time. Right? I mean, we start a day and we don't necessarily have someone telling us what to do. Other than, Mom would disagree, obviously. But that's all right. We still have to have that discipline around us and do what we need to do. But I think for the first time, we get to spend our life doing a little bit more of what we want to do. And I know we've had some discussion around that. But starting that day with that heightened sense of excitement is critical. And really a part of that is something that came true to me a little bit more and timely, since in your podcast all about the Benjamins, you had a video clip from Bronnie Ware on what was it, regretful or regret.
So she worked in a hospice center in Australia, and I forget 5-7 years or so, but she wrote a book. I think she's a book now, but she wrote a paper initially of the 5 things that people regret on their deathbed. And one of them, the one that sticks out the most to me, was not becoming who they wanted to be. So basically, they lived the life that they were told they were supposed to live. They didn't do the things they wanted to do, which is all I'm about when it comes to the pursuit. So, but there were other things I wish I wouldn't have worked out or worked so hard. Basically, the end of it is all of the things that we're told are important to us. The career, the success, the money. Like when you're on your deathbed, you don't want to go back to get those things. You want to go back to the relationships. You want to go back to the experiences. You want to go back and feel fulfilled and do the things you want to do. My goal is to get her on the Pursuit podcast. She actually commented on my Pursuit Instagram about sharing it there. I mean, I did a quote, I think. So I'm hopeful that I can get her on the podcast. But anyways, back to Buddy.
No, I'm glad. That's what I wanted you to do, kind of, segue that in, because it was your post. And for you listeners out there, I mean, if you're not, within the family and getting Jay's All About the Benjamins, for other viewers out there, do check out Jay's All About Your Benjamins, and then his newest version that he's got out there called Pursuit, PRST. But that video that's out there, I think, is very worth the moment of taking. It's like 17 minutes, but
I'll put it in the show notes. It's her TED Talk.
Yeah, it's really tremendous. And one thing that I took from it, which kind of blended into what we've been speaking of, when we talked about the encore, kind of getting started, I talked about stopping for a moment and reflecting on my accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I focused on my accomplishments, I think all of us also in that time when we're doing that in our life, we also focus upon our regrets a little bit. I did so, but didn't talk to it. But when I watched that video from Ms. Ware, that point she made a lot of excellent points. But what struck out to me is that she said a lot of reasons that we don't do what we want and the regrets that she had learned through her time was due to a little lack of courage.
Mm-hmm.
Not the lack of courage I think she mentioned of, you don't have the courage and do it. But I think her reference was we hold ourselves back because we don't have that courage to step out that leads to our regret. Or we find ourselves patterned, as I spoke to, that I did for myself. I followed that traditional mainstream life pattern of got myself educated, went to work, had the family, knew that I would work to this period of time. Now, again, there's much more than that. Part of that was driven by point in time. Part of it was I had the luxury of recognizing from my father, who, of course, didn't want me to become involved in his business, the store in our town. Thanks to Uncle John, and Aunt Joyce, I had the opportunity to see another life outside of working the steel mill.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned previously, not that there would have been anything wrong working the steel mill. When I was growing up in that time, it was heyday of the mill. Everybody made great life. Everything was fine. But likewise, on the tail end, when I was in college, is when the steel mill started to decline. So I was able to escape. But the point of my mentioning that again here this morning in this podcast is part of that discussion of not having the courage. I think that's something that I'm going to take very strongly now, maybe more so than I was thinking, thanks to that video from her and her discussion of stepping out and remembering that in this phase of our life, since we get to write more of our script, we should be taking those extra steps. And not just extra steps, but I think it's also important for us to remain dreamers. I want us to pause for a moment and think about, when we were young, we dreamed a lot. When we first got out on our own, we dreamed even more. We were comfortable with dreaming when we were young. We were comfortable because we saw things the way we wanted them to be, whether it was about our career, the way our life was going to be. Like you said, Jay, you took more steps when we were younger because we could and didn't know any better. We were fearless. But as we grow older, we become disciplined by our work. We become disciplined by the traps we fall into. I fell victim to my own traps of, okay, this is the course I was going to take. I stayed true to that course. Yes, it paid us a lot of dividends. It developed me to become a much better person. Decisions that I made probably made me the person I am today. Those are all positive. But I think in this phase of life, as we talked about, sometimes we could fall victim to old models. The model of saying, okay, this is the retirement life. Just sit back, enjoy it, do what you want to do, and life goes on. But I will tell you today, now that it's 3 months since I, called this phase to be my next course in my encore, you do easily fall victim to of falling backwards, because there's only so much you kind of get done if you don't take that extra step and don't feel comfortable with dreaming. You will say, okay, this is okay, right? I've retired. I've got all this time. I'm doing what I want to do. No one's telling me what I need to be, where I need to be, other than what's necessary. So I don't want us to fall victim to that. So I would just keep encouraging you all to remain a dreamer. As we planned to move out and start our day with that heightened sense of excitement, remain a dreamer. Maybe we can't dream as wide open as we did when we were younger.
You can.
But I think we can.
You can.
Yeah.
People quit dreaming because they're told their dreams aren't attainable. And then back to not having courage, they fall victim to it. I was gonna add one. I don't think you should wait until your phase to start doing this. Like, I think we should all start incorporating this sooner. Hopefully we get back to starting the day with like feeling happy. Get back to that. But you don't have to wait until you're retired to be able to do all that. And I think it's interesting that we're told going the corporate route or the traditional route is safer. That going out and starting your own thing is riskier, and they're both risky. They just have different risks. And we're told that risking on your own and not having a safety net of a corporate job or whatever is a greater risk. But I would ask anybody, yourself included, who has done everything the right way and had the rug yanked out from underneath them in the corporate world, what was a greater risk? Was it a greater risk to trust that a company you put your blood, sweat, and tears in for 25 years was going to take care of you, and then because they were bought out and restructured, they let you go for no other reason than it was better for their bottom line? Is that less risky than going out and building something on your own? If you have the courage, I think you bet on yourself 11 times out of 10. Like who is going to take anything away from you if you believe in yourself and you have a viable business? It's not as easy as saying, all right, I'm going to go out and do my own thing, but I think it's less risky to bet on yourself than to rely on other people who don't give any cares about you.
Yeah.
Now, maybe your direct manager does or your direct colleagues do, but as you move further and further up the corporate ladder, you are just a number. You're a line item on a budget, and at any day they can get rid of you.
Right.
And then now you've lost your income, your benefits, your sense of confidence. Like it strips so much more than if you're going after something that you believe in and you're planning and doing all the right things to give yourself a good shot, and it doesn't quite work out the way you did. I feel like that's less of a ego hit because you were fully in control. I've got to imagine getting the rug yanked out from you does a number on your confidence because you did everything you were supposed to do, great evaluations, promotions, all these things, and all of a sudden they kick you out.
Right.
I think that you should take those risks. I think you should dream. And I also think that I would encourage you to do, because I know you don't have a big social circle, because growing up, you guys moved here. It was pretty much just us. Like that's one of the things I remember growing up is we did everything as a family. You and Mom weren't the parents that went out every weekend with other couples, or it was just always the four of us. But I would encourage you, the R in pursuit, PRST, stands for relationships. You need to surround yourself with other dreamers because they're going to inspire you. They're going to give you confidence. They're going to lift you up, and you're going to do the same thing for them. Mom's not a dreamer. So love her to death, but she's not going to be somebody who's going to push you to dream. Now, I'm not saying leave Mom. I'm saying, surround being in here with me is going to be good for you because I am a dreamer. I'm also an executor. I may not fully execute, but I don't just dream. I also take action. So I think that'll be good for you. But finding other people to be around, to have conversations with, grab coffee with once a month that are also dreamers will be good. You've got to surround yourself with people who are on the same trajectory as you are.
Right.
Their dreams may be bigger, they may be different, but they're still dreaming. They're not settling for the status quo.
Yep. Absolutely. No, great point. And an excellent segue. It was like we made, it's funny. I'm laughing inside how you and I are working together because that was a segue into the next point I was going to make about, the design that we need to have. Again, not to make this any formal, but as I talked about, having that vision to want to stay that dreamer is critical. And as you said, right, we should be doing it our entire life. I just wanted to highlight that as we start this encore phase of our life, that we just continue to be that dreamer like we were when we were young. Well, mainly because we also have, I think, a little bit more opportunity to just rebut a little. You're right. I chose a certain way to develop through my life. And yes, I took the safe route. That was just me. But I also think, at this phase of life, I just want to encourage us in that dreaming phase to dream as big as I did back then. And I think now we have a little bit more of that courage or that little, push that we need, because I'm just going to say a little more, at least I feel, a little more of the security around us that we can do that. Mm-hmm. One of which is I don't have to worry about, you and Kristen, mm-hmm. right? When I was coming up and going through my life, you're absolutely right, Jay. My focus was on us, and decisions made were about us and not upsetting the apple cart and keeping myself close to us rather than venturing out like I did the one time when you referenced I got the rug pulled out from me. I tried to step out and I kind of did the J&K group, if you remember.
No, business cards and
said business, I had everything in a plan,
you were trying to manifest
and I was trying to do it, but then I then I pulled back.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled back because, well, first of all, at that phase of life, I didn't have I didn't have enough planning going into it. It just happened to be convenient because it was at a time in life you and Kristen were older and where you were at in school. And I thought if this was the time for me to put out a shingle, see if I can do it, I could do it and draw the line in the sand. And when I got to that line in the sand, I, of course, just quickly went back to my safety and said, okay, I got to get back to corporate America and do this. Now, you're right. I should have dreamed and worked further along those lines and maybe executed a little better or sought help. That was the other thing I didn't do enough of, but I'm encouraging all of us now in this encore phase, as we're talking about staying a dreamer and doing more, we have to do more, as we spoke of earlier, to keep ourselves, enriched. Mm-hmm. We have to continue to challenge so that we don't leave our minds to just gather cobwebs, lose some abilities. We talked about those real physiological, psychological impacts to this phase of life, that if we don't stay active, we begin to digress. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to make sure I don't get off the beaten path too much on these open mic discussions that we're having and stay focused. But I think that daydreaming, having the courage, stepping out, and it is more critical. But I also think we have a little bit more of an opportunity to feel more comfortable in doing so. I know that I feel a little bit more comfortable in doing so now than I did earlier, and which is funny, right? I should have been more so. But I feel a little bit more sense of security now. Not that I'm, if you would, set with a huge nest egg where that's security I'm speaking to. I'm speaking more about the security of saying, I don't have to worry about Justin and Kristen. And, it's just mom and I now, mm-hmm. right? Just like it was when we first started life. Mm-hmm. So trying to draw that connection. When we first got married and we moved out, here, we had all that. It's kind of like this is that second go around, right? The encore. If it's just us, you're secure in your family. Kristen is secure in her family. I don't have to worry about you. I mean, as a parent, you worry about your kids no matter how old they are, right? As they say, and that is true. Yes, worry about the grandkids, but it's a different sense, right? So I do encourage us to stay aware, to stay a daydreamer like we were when we were kids, when we were young adults, and don't lose that is, I think, the only point I want to make. We can't lose that, mm-hmm. right? Just as it's critical for us not to lose it for the sense of all the other points we discussed in our previous episodes about staying enriched, our social, abilities to contribute now to the community where we may not have been able to before. All of those things which are going to keep us motivated, keep our heightened sense of excitement moving, which has all the great physiological impacts to ourselves. Obviously, we have our health to worry about. So again, more opportunity to work out, find out and get involved with different types of workouts that I've never done before to help. Changing of diet is always, important to us throughout life. I think all those are important in what I'm saying, the design phase of what we're doing. And that's what we're setting up here and what I'm trying to still assess and jump into, but not have a rigid schedule. You know me, I've always been, very pragmatic. I too have to learn that, you got to have a plan, you got to execute on it. But also the luxury I now have is that I can be more spontaneous than I've ever been previously, mm-hmm. because I'm here at this phase. Mm-hmm. I don't have the, 12, 14-hour day to worry about with work as such and schedules and conference calls and things of that nature. So I can do that. I also think it's important in this phase as we're planning and I need to execute to get this sense of excitement each day is, we have to diversify. You just drew that point out. My social network has always been, real small, right? Real sort of family oriented, mm-hmm. not just immediate family, not just blood, but those very close friends that I've considered family throughout life. Several of them now are no longer with us, mm-hmm. So that shortens that circle that we have. Others, relationships that we've had, we've found out that, they weren't important relationships. They seemed important at the time, but they were more circumstantial. Mm-hmm. So some of those, have now moved away naturally. And that's where we need to start seeking that, as you just mentioned, finding out, who's that new circle of friends? Where are they in inclusion of that part? And then also, we talked about, the real need to invest invest upon ourselves, taking the day to spend a little bit more time with me. You're right. I'm still going to be totally focused on, mom, and what we do is going to be around our relationship, our life, what I need and want to do for mom, even at this phase of our life. But I also know that I have to take a little bit better care of me, and realizing it's okay to be selfish and take some more time. I mean, that's what I'm doing and beginning to do. So I think for us today, this plan, this next step of outside of recognizing the time management portion of all of this that still has to be recognized, because there still is only so much time in the day. And there are some things that need to be attended to. I wanted to encourage us, and as you said, Jay, this should be throughout all of our lives. But I'm focusing right now just to this phase of my life, those of us approaching this phase, and those of us in this phase for a period of time. If you haven't, begun to daydream and dream more, let's do so. Let's encourage ourselves to do so every day and bring that part to us, so that we don't fall into that trap. Because I would tell you, it is still very easy to fall into that trap, just because it's comfortable to, on a day where there's not much going on, you wake up because, whatever reason, there's not much going on that day. It's easy just to say, oh, well, I'm just not going to do anything today. Versus, as I said, one of my tasks is, my book of the month. I've gone through now 4 books since retiring, and that's more than I've read in a lot of years, and I've done it in 4 months. But right now it's like I should already have my next book lined up. I know you've told me one I need to read, and I need to get that. But it's also like I should have a stack already sitting ready just to start moving. But since I don't have that, it's easy to go, well, I'll just not do anything. I don't want that to happen to us, to those of us who are watching. And when I say us, I'm trying to be as inclusive as possible. But I want us to say never give up on that dream, and to dream maybe even more now than ever. I've always dreamed throughout my life, and most of it has come to fruition, and I'm living more of a life than I ever thought I would. Back to your point, if I think about that succession of how I grew up, where I thought I would be, where many of us. I'm certainly much further along than I thought I would be, honestly, Jay. Am I exactly where my dream was? No, honestly, I'm not where that dream was. I mean, if that were true, to your other point, you asked, all the folks in the family and all about the Benjamins, what's your perfect day like? Well, again, if I had my perfect day, and I'll work on it, Mom and I would be waking up, probably this time of year in our cabin in the Smokies, so that we could wake up and watch the sunrise, do our walks, come back, watch the sunset, like we do when we go to Gatlinburg. So it would be more of that, knowing that I would have a period of time where that will happen. And one day that's going to happen. But there's nothing wrong with staying with that dream and working towards that, even though it may be a little limited at times. But I want us to stay engaged. I want us to stay vigilant. I want us to stay cautious, because we, are living in very different times. These are extraordinary times still in our life. And I think there's, maybe more uncertainty, at least as I see it. Now I'm starting to sound my age. What I've lived through, right? What I've seen and recognized, watching older guys that I grew up with coming back from Vietnam, being a part of seeing the Berlin Wall fall, living through the financial times and seeing, the great problems that we had in our financial systems, and not that we lived, obviously not a depression, but, thinking back to the various little crashes that have occurred, living through those times and seeing big crashes, and remembering that happening when I first started working in the 80s. I can't remember the exact period of time when we had the big crash. But, if I start checking off what I've lived throughout our history to date, this day and age, it's a very different time for lots of reasons. And, I don't want that to stop us who are now in our phase of the encore, to lose sight that, yeah, it's an extraordinary time, but we've got to remember to still move on, because it's going to be a better day. Each day is going to be a better day. Wake up with that sense of heightened excitement about the day, and move through our living, move through our plans to have a greater purpose, get into more work that we can do for our family, ourself, and the community. But see, again, you can see my priority, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't put myself first yet,
Mm-hmm.
as I'm supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
I still kind of throw that family before myself, and I know that's critical, and they're tied so closely together that I don't know that myself I'm going to ever be able to separate that. So probably when I'm on my last days, you're going to be telling me, you should have done this, which you're going to be right. But that's okay. We have some things. I'm going to pause just for one moment, Jay, and say part of where I wanted to digress on, as I got myself a little bit off my plan and my notes here. In one previous episode, we talked a little bit about a different way of approaching this phase of life, of maybe not, again, retirement's not retirement. It's not your father's retirement anymore, to steal an old commercial phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And you always kidded me about having, Buicks, now how I got old by buying Buicks. So that threw me into the category of being an old timer. So using that phrase of it's no longer your father's Buick anymore, it's no longer your father's retirement. We talked a little bit about, folks who are considering time to leave, we'll call the structured workforce, whether that's for corporate America or even for yourself, and thinking about this phase of life, the encore. We talked a little bit about, maybe a phased approach to this, but maybe not. I'll stay on the corporate side of the world. Not giving up your corporate job, but maybe taking a lesser position or working less hours. So we talked about that. And there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, I think the 15th of March or whatever, that actually addressed that. So I guess people are listening to our discussion, Jay. The Wall Street Journal picked up on that discussion and went out to see what's happening. And they did report that there's more and more acceptance of that sort of, kind of hybrid phase for their more senior individuals, of phasing into retirement rather than just giving it up. It actually said that it's up to around 23% versus 16% in 2016. Still not staggering, but that's pretty decent when you think about it. And they talked about it where folks are beginning to talk more about phasing themselves into a position where they're working less. But in many cases, which is surprising to me in this survey, which is also a big reason some of us don't make that leap into calling it quits, is because of the health, our benefits, right? Very expensive to get benefits on your own, or and especially if you're still having a family or a later part of your life, or depending on your medical condition. But in many of these cases, they're still able, some of these that are participating in this, they're still allowing their employees who are taking less hours or a lesser role to keep their benefits, or a modified version of the benefits, which if that's what's capable and you're able to negotiate that could help project you into maybe taking that approach to making life a little easier, helping yourself stay a little more, secure, building more, wealth along the way, but not give it totally up to where you really, quote unquote, retiring. So I just wanted to kind of digress on that note, since we talked about it and saw that and felt, well, that's good to know. And we sort of addressed that and encourage folks to think about that seriously. And I think that's a great option to think about.
I think with the labor market where it is today, not enough great employees to be hired, it gives those who may want to transition some bargaining power to say, hey, I know you can't fill this spot. I don't want to fully leave. I'll work half-time, part-time, be able to still do it, have more flexibility, train the next person who comes in. But I think that there's more bargaining power for those individuals because of the labor market right now. It's not a different situation to say where they could go hire somebody and pay them half the price and get just as quality of work. That's not the case right now. There's not enough people to hire. So I would agree that that's a good way to kind of transition out. And I've seen it firsthand with clients. I have clients that went in to retire and they're staying another 9 months because they're getting all of the freedom they want in retirement. The employer doesn't want them to go. So the employer is saying, hey, if you want to be able to travel whenever you want and all you need is Wi-Fi, then fine, do that. Like, you don't have to come to the office anymore. Like, we don't want to lose you. So now clients are getting the opportunity to have the freedom they actually are seeking in retirement. Like, they may not want to be retiring to do nothing. They just want more time. So now they get the time they're looking for. They maintain the income they were getting before, and it's an even better situation. And they're in a position that if the employer doesn't live up to what they said, then they can walk. They can say,
Yeah.
hey, I gave you 2 months. You asked for 9. I'm here and I'm done. So I do think there's more bargaining power.
Yeah. I think that's critical, and that's where I want us to, focus on as an individual and as a group as we're moving into our encore, is to feel comfortable in making those approaches, and thinking about those options, because again, as you said, the market is what it is, and you also have they want to slow the brain drain as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
The seasoned employees wanting, because what's the phrases now? There's been phrases they've used in the press about great resignation, and there was another one too about the baby boomers leaving. But whatever that phrase was, very similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as you said, and the younger group not wanting to work in corporate America and have their own, but so you can't replace that talent. So a great way to slow that a little bit. So I think that's encouraging, and I'm just saying that that's a great option for us to pursue to help us as we move to this level. But at the same time, if you do that, my only words would be, this is what I would end up doing, unfortunately. If I were to do that, I'd fall into my old trap of making it like I never left,
Mm-hmm.
and that wouldn't have been the right thing, because
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have accomplished what I wanted, and that's a discipline I have to learn to get better at, and that's one of the enrichment challenges I have in my triangle. And two,
Mm-hmm.
that we talked about last episode, that enrichment part of helping myself get better. That's what I've got to learn to do. I'm always going to give my best, as all of you know who know me. That's all I can do. And in many cases, I will always put you first before me, but I'm learning to get a little better at that if I can. But I think that's important in our invest category of our plan before we, start out on our venture in this new world of our encore, and make that a part of what's driving us. I think for me, the benefit of this phase of our life is to drive us as individuals to have a quality of life that we really need to have and can have today.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we have the option to. As we mentioned, there was the old model not too long ago that when you did retire, you didn't have a lot of these options we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The employer wasn't necessarily going to take you back. There wasn't as easy an opportunity to to create your own little lane for various reasons. Society as a whole, not that I'm saying that it's completely putting this aside, they still look at us at a certain way, and that's an old model that's breaking, obviously, because the longevity we addressed. But not too long ago, when you were 65, you were old, and you weren't giving the opportunity because they wanted to get rid of you. Number one, because you were probably one of the higher wage earners in an organization, again, a way for the organization to help its bottom line. But nowadays, it doesn't matter, because we can, as we spoke before, all things being equal, if we're staying healthy, we got another 30 years ahead of us. And that's a 30 years of life that we can be very, very beneficial because of all of our expertise, all of the time spent, experience. So I think those things are very important. To stay a dreamer, have a good design that you're trying to, and though I'm not artistic, but the design of painting that landscape that you want to paint in this phase of life is critical. And get very colorful with this design. I guess is my point here of, don't be afraid to venture out and use some of those bold colors if you were painting a landscape, and make your sunrises and sunsets very grandiose. Think of the most beautiful sunset that you've seen. Make your encore phase that brilliant. Make the beginning of your day as wonderful as that first glimpse of sun coming up over the horizon. That's huge. I've always loved early morning, meaning being an early riser, and always loved the late at night, because again, that's when everything's kind of quiet and you get that alone time. But make that a part of our work. Make that a part of our design. The diversify piece, I think, is critical for us in this phase. And most of that is our self-investment and what we need to do for ourselves, and be willing to continue to do that. And if we haven't done it, like myself, then I'm encouraging all of us to take that piece forward and do that. And then wrap it all up in just continuing to invest in yourself, never quitting, never settling, and looking for that, the greater purpose that we have at this point in our life. So that's how I'm going to end today, Jay, with what I've got to deliver and my thoughts and where I'm at this phase at the end of my third month already, which is kind of crazy.
I was going to throw in one thing. You're starting the day off focusing on the happiness. Like, one of the best ways to start your day off in a good mood and feeling happy is to just list the things that you're grateful for. Your gratitude, if you can find things to be grateful for, it's a reminder that no matter what's going on, however you woke up, you can refocus on whatever good is in your life. And no matter how crappy things are, you can find one or two people that you're grateful for, one or two things that you're grateful for, to refocus, and just setting your day off with that initial focus on here's the good in my life changes the tone of your mindset and sets you off on a better opportunity to have a positive day. So if you're struggling to start the day off happy, list 3 things that you're grateful for. And do the same thing at the end of the day. What are 3 things that happened today that I'm grateful for? And just focus on that gratitude and that appreciation, and watch your mindset and your mood change, because you're bookending your day with the positive. And that will, over time, outweigh any negative that comes in. So that was the thing I was going to offer.
Yeah, no, that's great. Great points, Jay. Excellent points, and one that I'll certainly do. I have always been grateful. If I've been blessed with not just the family that I was born into, but those who have crossed my path. As you've said, and I'm learning to appreciate more. Those weren't just coincidence why certain people came into your life. They came for various reasons, and I've been so grateful to those individuals, and got a lot of individuals to be very, very thankful for and grateful for. And speaking of which, our next episode, what I'd like to try to do is bring in a guest. Again, try not to be as academic, but one of our thoughts that we need to have when we're preparing for our encore, obviously, and building our base, is that we've got to think a little bit about our finances and where we're at and what we can do, right? So again, not to be academic, but I'm going to check this financial advisor that I know and see if he might be available to be a guest, and some questioning to him about the finances, what folks should be thinking about throughout their career and as they're getting ready to jump into retirement, and things that may be beneficial for us today. Once we're here, how do we sustain that sort of level of wealth that we need? But I also like this financial advisor is because he drives a lot of his purpose on his core thought process that I say he has. It's more than a thought process; it's a passion, in his his desire to make sure everybody's living their fullest and meeting their purpose in life and their pursuit. Now, I've given a few clues there who that individual will be. Those of you that are part of this financial advisor's world, you know him well. Those who may be listening for the first time, he's been a part of my life, his entire life, and we'll see what he can give us in his infinite wisdom next time around.
I don't know if you can afford this financial advisor.
Well, I know I can't. Well, I know I can. I know I can. I've got a few things to hold over him that I can slip him in here for nothing on as such. But we'll see that, and then try to add some, so it's just not me giving all the discussion here on out. So with that, I am going to say to all of you again, thank you for listening in, spending your time with us. As always, make the most of your day, and do the best you can for yourself. And we'll see you next time around. Jay?
See you in the next episode.
Take care, folks.